I have recently taken on the identity of revolutionary. And by revolutionary, I do not mean violent. I mean non-violent revolutionary. Right. I think that it's time for... This country was founded by revolution, and the political system is entirely, thoroughly corrupt. So we've had the arc from the start of the country to now, and maybe there were periods of less corruption, but now it's pretty much clear to everyone that it's just a completely corrupt political system. So it's time for another revolution. But this one is not going to be violent. It's going to be collaborative. It's going to be global. It's not going to be just American-centric. It's going to be all ages and races and genders and sexual orientations and classes, connected by multimedia and collaboration. So I really like the term revolution in that context. Some people are a little hesitant or afraid of that term, or they just think it sounds too radical, and so they like evolution. And my guess is you would be more inclined towards evolution rather than revolution. But I'm curious, do you think that that is a mistake to put myself out there in that term? Should I be adopting evolutionary rather than revolutionary?
Yeah. So the energy of revolution, I'm 100% for. The energy of not just retrofitting on our old systems our latest best thinking. Yeah. But literally shaking it up at the core. Yeah. And obsoleting it. Yes. Which feels energetically like a revolution, right? Yeah. When you're not talking about, let's just do democracy a little better, or let's do our economic capitalism a little bit better, or let's do a little less corruption. When if what you're actually talking about is a complete rewrite of our infrastructure, of our social structures, of our governance structures, then the energy of revolution is what's needed, because there's a lot in it. Yeah. Right? But from a consciousness level, like the reason why you think I like the idea of evolution better than revolution, as does Barbara Marx, your mother's sister, is because I believe that we need to pop up in consciousness. And what I'm getting at is that when you're trying to obsolete the system and create a new system, all of the rebelling against, all of the against energy, this is bad, this is good, that creates a lot of opposition and a lot of friction. Right. Right? And it turns you against the very people that you need to actually engage and enroll. So if you go out there, let's say, and if it's about government corruption, and get on the microphone, get on your soapbox and say, you all are corrupt, down with government. That is going to have everybody that's entrenched in that system more entrenched against you, more opposed to you, and more wanting to take you out and down, as your father experienced. Like they wanted to assassinate him. Yeah. And so that's actually a very real thing when you talk about toppling a system that has a lot of people at the top benefiting. Yeah. They don't want to see it change. Now, if you could instead go post-conventional, right? And post-conventional meaning, like, how do we actually enroll the very same people we want to rebel against, or create a revolution against? If you could instead get all of those people actually on your side and show them, I think it happens in steps. I think you first create the healthiest version of the existing system, right? So this isn't quite yet the obsoleting the system. This is, what is the healthiest version of government that we could conceive of, right? And if we could conceive of that, then if you can transition us there, getting the buy-in of all of the people that you think are the problem, then you have them all on your side in order to create that system, because they want to be seen as the heroes. They don't want to be seen as the villains. And they have all the cards. They have the money. They have the power. So I want to transcend and include the wisdom of what that system is there for, and why we elected as a whole human population to buy into this system for so many years. There is wisdom there. And if, as a revolutionary, you tend to be naive many revolutionaries tend to be naive, and they tend to not actually fully integrate the wisdom of that consciousness level.
Yes.
So looking at spiral dynamics, the consciousness level of our government structures were formed in a World 4 dynamic, right? Which is we need law and order in order to protect us from the chaos of World 3.
And they were rebelling against level 3, which
was chaos, warlords, mongering. I mean, it was aggressive and violent. It's the Middle East is still World 3. So World 4 develops morality, religion, government. But it also develops the DMV, where you have to go through so much red tape. It's maddening. It's maddening. So it's like they're limiting your freedom. So if you don't realize the value of systems, of governmental systems, in that form, and integrate that rather than having it be your shadow, then you're not going to create new systems that actually keep that in mind. Totally. And so evolution transcends and includes. So instead of making those World 4 people wrong and crazy, we're going to actually see what's wise about it, create the healthiest version of that as we transition to something all the way new. So do I want the energy of revolution? Fuck yes. Yeah. Like, we need more of that. I'm sad that we're so resigned. And if we have to call it a revolution to get people off their ass, absolutely. But the thinking underneath has got to be evolutionary thinking. Yeah. Revolutionary voices and energy with evolutionary thinking is the way I would approach what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes, that energy, exactly. I think
it's like it needs that level.
Energy, with evolutionary thinking. I think that's true. And I'm very, personally, I get very energized by the word revolution. To me, and
I do too.
Again, and I'm not talking about anything that looks like a revolution that we've already seen, because there were times and places for other revolutions and the American Revolution, but this is going to look like something we've never seen before.
Well, I'd say let's create a language around it. Yeah. And which means that the language should be redefined, either redefining that word, creating a new definition of a word that exists in our lexicon, and say this is what revolution means in 2015. Yeah. Let's redefine this because our language creates our ethos. Yeah. And our ethos creates our language. So if we don't even have language for the things, for our vision of what we want the world to be, then it's hard for us to even conceive of it. And it's hard for us to create infrastructure around it. So I think we need to start creating a common language around what this revolution is.
Totally.
So
I like that a lot. I think that you need the energy of one, but the thinking of the other. I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think you want like World 7. If I were going to give it like a label, it would be like a World 7 consciousness, which is systemic.
For people who are listening now, we're talking about spiral dynamics as a theory developed by, what's it, Don Beck is his name?
Actually, Claire Graves originally developed it. Yeah. Don Beck took Claire Graves' linear model and put it in a spiral form. Yes. And then today, Ken Wilber has made it really popular. Yeah. So really popular.
So Ken Wilber is one of
an homage to Claire Graves, actually.
So the lineage is like Claire Graves. It's actually a man named Claire. It's Clare. Graves, and then Don Beck, and then Ken Wilber. And I have a cursory understanding of it, but the basic idea is that there's these levels of consciousness and social evolution, and it doesn't mean that one level is necessarily like better than the other level. It just means that it's more complex and it includes more.
Yeah, it's much like a third grader is not better than a second grader.
Right. It's just
they've just
included more.
They've just included more in their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the levels that mostly exist now in the world are like level
3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, 3, 4, and 5. Like
mostly 4 and 5.
Like anywhere where there's like warlords and like drug gangs, that's like level 3.
That's 3. Mm-hmm.
That's just like straight up warlordism. Level 4 is like a strong, sort of religiously based
it's all about order,
and there's a moral order. And there's a government with strong rules, and often religiously based.
Right.
Level 5 is capitalism, rationalism, scientific worldview,
materialism,
corporate market based order, And then
personal achievement. It's about like personal evolution. More for you. It's achieving more for you.
Yeah.
The United States is very level 5.
Yeah. So the United States is the most level 5 country that's ever existed and probably ever will exist. And it's and then level 6 is like what I grew up in, which is Berkeley, Bay Area, which is.
Green mean.
Yeah, it's like everyone's equal and
egalitarian, communal.
It has wonderful ideals because it's all about equality and everyone has value, and we have
the hippies.
And the hippies, and it has a shadow side, which is that it is against any type of hierarchical ordering.
Yes,
and you actually it's. In certain contexts, in certain ways, it's very hard to achieve anything without some kind of. You actually do need leaders. There's no such thing as leaderless. Like in anything, you need people who are leading. And if you have a worldview that says that there is no such thing as leadership, or there should be, then you're not going to accomplish it much. You're just going to sit around and smoke pot, which is, I've done plenty of that, but it's fun. It's like being rather than doing. Like we need being, but we also need doing. And to do things, you need leadership. So tell us about level 7. What is level 7?
This is exciting. This is the tipping point that many of us, I think, want to be helping to create in the world. If you buy into the research, there's research that says that about 5% of the population only is at a level 7 consciousness. And when we say level 7, that means like predominantly, not that they don't ever dip into the other consciousness levels, but level 7 is integral. It's systems, and so whereas all of the levels that came before are each thinking the level under them is crazy, and the level above them is misguided, or vice versa.
Right.
At level 7 is the first time you're not actually developing your ethos and worldview out of fear, but you're actually developing your worldview out of love, connection. And so it's the first one that kind of transcends that fear-based worldview. But it's the first one that actually also looks at the world and sees how interconnected everything is. Everything co-emerges and co-arises, right? Our brain and our consciousness co-arise and co-evolve together. Our language and our ethos co-arise and co-evolve together. It's like it's not the chicken or the egg, it's the chicken and the egg, each relating to each other. And so that systemic view is the kind of view that will look at the whole world and look at all of our global problems and say, we cannot continue to externalize harm on any other aspect of the system. If we see it all as interconnected, then we'll stop doing the things we've been doing our whole lives. Yeah,
it's the first truly global worldview. Because all the other ones are, it's like warlords, you have these little fiefdoms. Then, capitalism, you could have said, in a sense, was a global worldview in that it attempted to link the whole world into interconnected markets, but it doesn't treat everyone. We're not in it together in capitalism. It's each man for himself, each country for themselves. And my gain is your loss. It's zero sum games, win lose, and it's pretty clear. I mean, I feel like I've just finally begun to understand level 7. And it's really, really simple. It's for me and my understanding, which is it's just realizing we're all like we either all succeed or we all fail.
Right.
And that's not just a pretty philosophy. It's like it's pretty clear now. Yeah. There are global problems such as global warming that cannot be solved by individuals and cannot be solved by individual nation states. They have to be solved globally. And so we're going to actually, this one will take us down if we don't solve it. So
I would go as far as to say that we are right now in a self-terminating system. The moment that you can say it's okay to advantage me as an individual, corporation, company, race, species over another, whoever that other is, whether it's the planet, the animals on it, the women, the other races, whatever. The minute that you have that as a ethos, as a worldview, that creates that inequity, the win-lose. And since we're all interconnected, we're actually all losing. Because if we continue to pollute our air because we want more for ourselves, we have to breathe that air.
Yeah.
So that's a zero, like that's a
Totally.
terminating game to continue down that path if you don't ever stop.
Yeah.
And so what I see is that we are at a developmental curve. We are in a state that we've a little overplayed as a humanity, right? Where we've been growth and consumption, consumption, grow, consume, grow, consume. You know, a caterpillar is in that developmental stage for a finite period of time, and just consumes everything in his environment in order to go into the kind of pupal stage until the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. But when it's a butterfly, it goes into another developmental phase, and that phase is a regenerative, adaptive phase. So it's not about growth and consumption anymore. Yeah. And so what we're experiencing right now is we needed to, you know, as a world to go through some amount of growth and consumption in order to kind of form what we formed, but we now need to get out of that phase and into a phase of regeneration of what I would call omni-consideration, being omni-considerate, meaning considering all, right? So what if every decision you made, you considered the systemic impact of not just on you, whether you had more, but how about your neighbor? How about the trees? How about the water? How about the people over on the other side of the world? And so the thinking that would go into the systems you design and the governments you design and the economic systems you design is altogether different when you realize that we're all in one ecosystem versus that we're all separated. And you don't create a win-lose because you know that you lose. Nobody wins when you create win-lose.
Yeah.
You create a war, you win the war. Nobody won that war.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's a great example right there. Okay, so let's just say this the Iraq War, for example, which was highly indeterminate whether it was won or not or whoever won or didn't win, like everyone was fucked with that one.
Everyone's fucked.
People in Iraq were fucked, and Americans turned into a warmongering country that took all the goodwill. We had probably a high point of goodwill right after 9/11 from the global community. We took that and flushed it right down the toilet with those two wars.
We did.
And then we spent trillions of dollars that we don't have.
Yep.
So everyone lost with that one.
The land, it was destroyed over there. The people's sense of safety and trust in us was destroyed.
Yeah.
And whatever we gained out of that created a set of circumstances where so many people lost that they don't come out of that rejoicing. They come out of that in a worse state of affair. Yeah. And so if you think that anyone wins when you engage in a war, you're sadly naive.
You just get more war. Like now we have ISIS there.
Right.
It's gotten so much.
You can't have a win-lose game lead you anywhere you want to go. It's de-evolutionary, not evolutionary. It's win-lose always leads the same place. We know the story. Every movie is a win-lose movie. It's the hero and the perpetrator. Yeah. And the hero gets it. Yeah. And we actually, this is the sick part, is we actually cheer when the supposed villain gets killed, murdered, decapitated, in some way. The very thing we were upset at the perpetrator for, we're cheering, hey, it's not a good movie till the bad guy gets it. Yeah. Right? And so that ethos, the win-lose ethos, is to me at the core of the problem of all of our problems. If we had to boil down, like, why are we in the state we're in? Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that if we could change, the one belief that if we could change would change everything? Mm-hmm. And to me, it's that we think it's okay to advantage one over another to the detriment of another. Mm-hmm. And that we have incentivized. It's better, like, we've incentivized so that I have more money, you have less, or I have more things and that I don't actually want to share them. Mm-hmm. Like even the concept of owning things. Yeah. Like I own this, meaning that I own it and you don't, versus a sharing economy. And let's be really clear here. At least when I talk about these things, and I completely agree with what you just said. For me, it's not coming from a kind of airy-fairy, idealistic, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if everyone got a gold star and are all connected no, this is literally like we're not going to survive. This planet is not going to survive unless we develop this type of thinking. Because the idea that I win by spewing carbon out into the environment Right.
You know, so I can have my car rides faster. And by the way, I'm not necessarily saying don't go and drive cars. Or like, this is not an individual consumption argument at this moment. It's more a systemic argument. Right. If we think that like we can win by just being a little bit more convenient with our transportation, and the other people, it's okay if they get the carbon, it doesn't work that way. We all get the carbon.
Right.
You know, we all get the global warming.
Well, we're externalizing the harm that because we think we're in an isolated system.
Yeah.
So we think there's an away for our trash.
Yeah.
We think there's the pollution goes up in the air and I'm going to be fine. And because we consider that we can externalize the harm, that there's somewhere else for it to go.
Yeah. Totally. Let's just, for the listeners, let me explain my sense of what Jennifer's talking about here with the externality, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it, Jennifer. So there's a concept in economics called externalization of costs and benefits, which basically means that when you have a transaction that two parties have agreed to, like buying something or selling something, an externalization is when there's some cost, or in this case, let's just say cost. It could also be a benefit. When there's some cost that is borne by other people who are not party to that transaction. Yes. So when when we ship trash to Africa, you know, that has a cost to the
not to us.
Yeah, but there's a cost. Yeah, there's a cost to the local people who now have all this trash there and have to look and smell at the trash. We're not paying for that, so that's an externality. So most environmental problems are just externalities. It's their value that has been created or destroyed that's not being accounted for in the original transaction.
Yeah, and it's to me more insidious, and I'm heavily influenced by Daniel Schmachtenberger, an amazing systems thinker. But he said once, in a way that really impacted me, he said, look, as long as as the whale is worth $100,000 to us in a fishing company, but zero to us in its native environment, we'll continue to, extinct the whale.
Exactly.
As long as the redwood tree is worth hundreds of thousands to us, cut up as lumber, but zero to us in its forest, we'll cut down all the forest. And so what we've done is created a system that isn't like everybody is bad. It's not that we're all evil. It's that we're actually creating a system that's incentivizing us to extract and externalize the harm from one place in order to get the benefit in another, versus actually looking at the entire system, the entire ecosystem, and saying, actually, how can we achieve this where nobody loses, where there's no externalities of harm? And I guess what I want to see, what the evolution or revolution I want to see, is where our decision makers, our men, our women, our people in power, think more like that, think more systemically, that they stop externalizing harm and considering that there's an away that somehow leads anywhere but a self-terminating system where we all end up losing in the end. So, I guess that's my plea. That's what I want more than anything. And whether it's an evolution or a revolution, it's probably a bit of both is what's going to end up happening. Yeah,
it's a massive system improvement. The global system is broken right now. Everything you look at. Right. Healthcare. Well, there are a couple things that are working really well. I think global communication. Man, I feel I can stay in touch.
Many wonderful things.
There's like global communication is amazing. Content, like there's some incredible content out there now. Like it used to be, I'm 38. When I was growing up, you just had crappy TV, standard fare. The movies were like commercial. Maybe you could find like an indie film here or there. Now, like if you want good content, you can find really interesting people creating really interesting things.
It goes even beyond that, and that's a beautiful example. But we are more globally connected and have more access to understanding and knowledge, and even more access to resources than we've ever had. I don't think that we were capable of addressing the magnitude of our problems until around now, when we actually develop the kinds of technologies that connect us. And the internet, just the existence of it is literally a manifest, made real expression of our interconnectivity that runs much deeper than just, hey, we're connected via, fiber optics and satellites.
Yeah.
But it's a literal manifestation of the underlying truth of our nature, which is that we are interconnected. And then if we realize that more, if our technology shows that to us more now, that we can't ignore it. We can't ignore it now that, we know what's happening in Africa because we see it piped into our YouTube channels and our news. We can't pretend not to know.
Yeah.
We can't pretend not to know that we're creating the damage we're creating because our technology is now at the point where it's showing us what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we've got to stop pretending we don't know. And that's the revolution, is what are you pretending not to know? And what if you stopped pretending?
Yeah. At this point, there's no excuse for not knowing on some issue. If you wanted to know about some issue, you can pretty easily, and you can get the scoop. You can see the videos and the images, and let's talk also. Let's keep developing this list of things that are really working well. I think we mentioned a few.
There's so many.
Culture. There's just some amazing culture being produced, like just music and the movies. There's you could debate about movies, but just video content, just art, the art that's being created.
Oh, art is no longer in our circles in the realm of just being about beauty.
Right.
There's a time when our view on art was to beautify. And that's beautiful. Art does that. And we need more beauty. I mean, we really do need more beauty. But the role of art that I see in our future, that I see now, is in transforming our lives, in actually making manifest the vision of a world that we most want to see. Yeah. And showing us that in our native environment, that vision, such that we can look at it, interact with it, respond to it now. Yeah. And that is a transformative experience. I have in my living room a beautiful image of me done by a visionary artist that paints a version of me that I feel like was a future version of me. And every time I look at her, I transform and want to become more like her. Yeah. And that is worth way more than just a pretty picture on my wall that looks pretty or has nice decor and matches my curtains. Yeah. Right? And so the role of art is in transforming our lives and in being our visioners. I mean, what if we gave the artists the role of paint the most beautiful, inspiring picture of what humanity could look like if we lived up to our potential as a species? Paint us that. Just write songs about that. Give us poetry about that. And really use your art to vision what we could be, so that art is not just pretty, it's not just beauty, it's actually evolutionary and transformative. And that's what I see for art, and that's happening in art. Yeah. I mean, lots of evolutions are happening. The whole quantified self movement is another really neat one, where we're able to know more about what's happening in our biology. Like they've got like tricorders now, like from Star Trek, that can measure things that are happening in your body. And now we have the kind of boutique medicine that's starting to kind of take over, where we can actually look at what you need and not just give you a pharmaceutical that mostly is toxic to your body, but actually give you something that's custom designed for your DNA, for your biochemistry. And you can quantify it, and actually, instead of just doing it with pharmaceuticals, you can actually do it with, supplements and the right nutrition. And we now know so much more. It's going farther than just supplements and nutrition. They've got like neuro-enhancing supplements that like enhance the brain, so that there's more interconnections happening in our brains, and we can actually have our biology, our biochemistry impact our thinking. I mean, that's a novel concept. Imagine if you gave yourself the right medicines, the right supplements, the right nutrition that would actually unlock more interconnections in the brain, which would make you more empathic, which would make you more intelligent, which would make you more able to see the connections amongst things and systemic thinking, that our biology actually impacts that. And so that those kinds of things are being discovered all the time. So I mean, I don't know that I'm an idealist, but I believe.
Yes, you're an idealist. Yes, you are.
Well,
what has you say you might not be?
Well, no, I mean, I think I feel like I don't know whether we're midwifing the end of our civilization into its death, or whether we'll come out the other side. There's plenty of evidence on both sides to really take you down to your knees when you really look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really, really crazy things happening. And I believe in our ability to turn that around.
Yeah. Well, I have been steeped in all that evidence and arguments since birth. I grew up in an activist household. I grew up literally at the dinner table hearing about how we were all going to blow up in nuclear war. And, so I absorbed a lot of that. I mean, literally in my nervous system, I had to, as a child, that's some heavy shit to be hearing about all day long.
More than almost anyone, given your family system.
Yeah, I just heard about that. So I actually have come to a point where I've just accepted that that's a very real possibility. And so in this strange way, not that I hope for that to be true, but in a strange way, I actually find it gives me more clarity and therefore more comfort, because it's like we're going down. Like if we don't do anything, we're going to go down. So the only way we're going to get out of this is if we do something. Now, whether it works or not, is another question. But if we don't do something, we're going down. And so let's do something, but let's make it fun. What was that statement by Emma Goldman, the anarchist? It was something like, I don't want to be a part of your revolution if I can't dance in it. There's something like that. It's like, let's dance and let's have music and art and let's have evolutionary sex and let's pioneer new models of relating and new models of relationships and love and sex, and let's make this a totally
and economics
and everything,
energy,
needs massive upgrading right now, all together at once. Now, there's one area where you're particularly focused on, and that is women's leadership. What do you see as the role of women in leading this revolution change?
There's not a lot of places where all of the different factions of feminism and even just our culture all agree. But one of the things I think is less debatable is that we've had a fair run of a more patriarchal or masculine run world. And what I see is the kind of women's role and the masculine and feminine is they each form one thing, a whole-on, right? And so taken apart, they're actually not the full story, right? If just leading with our kind of masculine values of like competition and achievement and has gotten us really far, but it's like leaving half of what it means to be human on the table and leaving the tools of the feminine outside of the decision making. And I really feel like the women in particular, but really the coming together of both the masculine and feminine needs to occur in our decision making. Now, the women, by nature, we tend to be more collaborative. We tend to think more about being loyal to life versus loyal to an idea. We tend to be more about empowering others versus seeking power for its own sake. We tend to be more about resource sharing than resource obtaining. Right? And these paradigms, a movement from resource obtaining to resource sharing, a movement from seeking power to seeking to empower, a movement from, setting goals and getting there to actually creating something that is emergent and nurtures all life. Like these are roles that are more natural for women, right? We go there more easily. So I guess what I want to see is feminine leadership or those ideals more present in our decision making. I want those to, I want a woman to decide whether we go to war or not. I want
a council of women.
A council of women. Like,
Yeah.
if we're going to go to war, it's not like a woman might not ever decide there's something worth standing up for and fighting for. But boy, she's going to think twice, thrice.
Yeah.
And I want her to decide whether we're going to actually go out and destroy the planet and destroy people. Right? Just because our biology is like we actually create life in our biology. So it's really hard for us to get out from under that wiring to be the destroyer of it. So we're going to think twice before we do that. I want a woman to decide whether we're going to use coal or nuclear energy or whether we're going to use renewable energy or not.
And I completely agree. The one thing I would add to that is I think that if you take a patriarchal male-dominated system that's mostly run by men and then is run by male values, and then you put a woman at the head of it, aka
she's just
Hillary,
a man. Yeah.
It's not going to be that much different.
It's not going to be that much different.
One. It's not about one person and their reproductive biology. It's about a system of values. And if you had a government that was run by the values you're talking about, and that was largely run by women with men helping also. Then I completely agree with you that you get the women deciding these things. But I think that just having one woman at the helm of the patriarchal structure is. I mean, it's a movement in Thatcher,
a good direction. Yeah, she was a man.
She was not a. That was full on patriarchy. And
you have to have what I want is women willing to bring the other skill set, the other tools that they have as women to the table, to the leadership, to the decision making. So not let's put away the feelings and the collaborative nature and the loyalty to life. No, actually bring that because we actually need it.
Yeah.
And we need it, Michael, not because it's fair, not because half the population is women, even though that already is a good idea.
Yeah.
We need it not just because we would treat each other better, which is already an amazing reason. I feel like we actually need it because the feminine values of collaboration and loyalty to life and all that are actually what we need in order to not be in this growth and consumption phase, is to get us into a regenerative phase.
Yeah.
I think we need it not because it's fair and not because we are nicer, but because it's actually what's needed.
Everything we're talking about now we're level 6 is all about it's fair and justice and equality, and that's again there's a need for that, and those were the ideals of the 60s, and it got us here. So it's not to knock it, but we're not doing this because it's fair. We're doing this because our fucking planet is fucked if we don't do this. Like we need to do this. It needs to happen.
And I'm particularly passionate just about being in conversations with women about bringing that kind of feminine leadership, those kinds of ideals and values out into the front in their lives. So I want women to be the decision makers of their lives and of our world. If I could have it my way, I mean, this will be maybe controversial, but
I hate controversy. Let's stop the recorder. Controversy is going to start. Turn it off. Don't listen. She's about anyone who has anything against controversy. Stop listening now.
And this is a gross generalization, but if I could have it my way for the next 100 years, I'd say I'd like the women to decide what we do, and then the men to help decide how.
Fuck yeah, I'm in.
Right? So
I'm totally in.
The women, or at least the feminine in us, decide what it is that we're going to put our time and energy into, and then let's have the men in us, the masculine analytical mind that so understands the engineering to figure out how to get there. And if we would play those roles, those are the right roles.
Yes,
those are the right roles in our society.
That's the best. That is the best encapsulation of masculine versus feminine I've ever heard. Yeah. And when I say these things, I want to these are just words, masculine, feminine. I mean, all the things about we all have both, and there's different genders and different identities, and so this is in no way to tell anyone that they should be one way or another way, or that their way is wrong, and there is something that a lot of people relate to in the word masculine, and there is something that a lot of people relate to in the word feminine. And I've always been wondered, what are those things? What are they? Because I've never heard someone encapsulate it very well. And what you just said really clarifies it for me. That if I were to choose
You'd let the feminine decide what to do?
Yeah.
And the masculine
Exactly.
decide
Like
how.
if I had a question about what I should do in my life, I tend to go to women. I have a lot of female advisors. You're one of them. You know, my mom, I have many lovers and friends who I care about who are women who give me guidance. And if I had some like really, and if I then decided, and then I was like, okay, I want to do this. Now here's how do I build this thing? Like, what do I got to do? This is the direction, but how do I go in that direction?
Then you go to Brian.
Yeah. Then I go to Brian, or I go to someone who has
Yeah.
not that women can't have technical knowledge, but it's just, it's a more masculine way of thinking.
Right.
It's like how to get shit done.
Yeah. You hand a man a plan, like here's where we're going, and he gets excited.
Yeah. And women, by the way, again, like women embody this too. We're just talking about
the
essences or archetypes or energies. We're not talking about biology, like what gonads you have.
Right. We're not talking about your organs. We're talking about the value set.
Yeah.
And it's a value set that's runs all the way deep. It's the on one side, it's the being and becoming. It's the father love, mother love. It's the agentic and communal. This is polarity, right? We live in a world that we express our humanity through our polarity. Mm-hmm. The on off, the right wrong, up down, and that everything, all the space in between those gives the variety and richness of the human experience. And so just like that, our masculine and feminine essences, which each have a very different flavor, define our human experience.
Yeah.
And so what we've done is we've idolized and worshipped one side and left the other one kind of in the background. And it's time to rebalance that.
Yeah.
It's clear. I mean, everybody is talking about it. It's not a novel idea that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But the novelty is in, I think, the realization that it's up to all of us, that it's not something that's resigned for somebody else to do. And what I guess I want to inspire is that everybody doesn't think that it's somebody else's job.
Yeah, that's a great...
Because we all think it's somebody else's job. Oh, it's too big, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
It's somebody else's job.
This is a key point of integral thinking, level 7 thinking, is that everyone has a role. Some roles have a bigger global impact than other roles. Right. You know, whoever's the president of the United States has usually more of an impact than someone who's served waiting tables. But everyone has a role. Everyone is doing something that is making a ripple. It's about ripples. Like, what ripples are you making? And whether you're waiting tables or you're the president of the United States, you're making ripples in your...
Well, do you want to be on the trailing edge or on the leading edge of your own evolution?
Yeah.
I mean, asking yourself that question, do I want to be on the trailing edge or the leading edge? And so if I want to be on the leading edge, then am I having a vision of a world that doesn't have these problems and sitting back and thinking it's for someone else to create? Or do I say, wow, I can make my imprint and be an iconic expression of that set of values, such that, like, that is the world I'm living in now. It's like I'll sometimes say I want to create an Eden on Earth, an Eden here now, not an Eden that we go to when we die.
Totally. Yeah, that's heaven and hell. I think about those ones a lot. I am agnostic about what I think about afterlife or not. I can I won't get into it, but I don't have strong opinions about that one. But I do believe that hell and heaven exist on Earth. I would say, roughly speaking.
Well, they're human creations.
Yeah, well, like heaven, I've been to heaven. I've had sexual experiences that were heaven. I was like, I'm in heaven right now. I don't need to go to the afterlife. It's here right now. I would say it's actually very bodily, because that's a bodily experience where our body produces this intense pleasure. And the opposite of that, I would say, is torture, where we do create hell. When someone is being tortured, where we're intentionally using their nervous system to crank up the pain, we are, in that person's physiology, in their subjectivity, creating hell. And our government does that a fair amount. Like, we do it. We support people who do it. It's like we create hell on Earth, and we can create heaven on Earth. Which one do we want?
Right. And I love the metaphor of Eden, because inside of that metaphor, it's actually not even heaven that I'm using, which is on purpose. Like, heaven feels like disembodied.
Right.
It's a little ethereal.
Oh, I like that. Eden.
And so Eden is a garden.
Eden is a garden. Ooh, I like that.
And so I use Eden because it's like a return to the idea that we're actually part of the planet and not here to conquer it. And I feel like most of our man-made technology is about dividing us from nature versus having us actually integrate further into our nature. And so if we were to create a Garden of Eden here, then that's a physical, tangible place that has you more embodied, more connected to the planet. But it's a place in our lore that was a place of total abundance, a place of where everything was handled. I mean, it was in any description as close to heaven as you'd really actually want, because you'd still be experiencing it and not outside of a body.
Yeah,
you'd actually physically, tangibly.
I like that. I've never heard that idea before. I think that's a brilliant reframe from heaven to Eden, and it also ties into our cultural mythology, because I'm not an expert in the Bible. All I know in the Bible I've read from R. Crumb's illustrated version, which is brilliant, by the way. He just
Asimov's?
No, I should see that one too. But the cartoonist R. Crumb, who's like this countercultural cartoonist, took the straight words and then illustrated them. It's brilliant. Anyways, so I mean, I could be getting details wrong here, but the basic mythology we all know is that there was this Eden where everything was great, and then nature, a snake, tempted one of the two people, and it was very deliberate which one they chose in this myth. It was the woman. She was the one who was fallen. She was the one, and
the temptress.
She was seduced by the snake, totally, and she kind of led to the fall by doing what? By biting into an apple, a piece of fruit. Like a wonderful piece of fruit that gave her knowledge. And that was her big crime, that now that all human has to be fallen.
Well, not only that, but we have toppled her power because of that story.
Yeah.
To make sure that she's always in the back seat. I mean, hardly, in many cultures, not even the owner of her own body. And her own decision about who has it or doesn't have it. So, I mean, that story perpetuates the balance in our world.
I would say if there was one story that needs to be rewritten, it's the Garden of Eden, Adam Eve.
Well, let's rewrite it now.
Let's rewrite it now.
Let's create a version of Eden that we all want to live into. That is not doesn't paint the picture of us going back to the primitive. And I think, like, if Avatar was, in one sense, like a vision of a humanity that's connected all the way to the planet.
Right.
The vision I have is actually not for us going back to primitive, but what if we used our technology to further and further connect us into our biology and into the planet, where we weren't. It would be like an Avatar, but in the future, right? Where the technology was integrated and the technology was used to make our bodies healthier and clean up pollution and regenerate.
So it would be like people have the values of the Na'vi. It's Na'vi, right? In the movie, where they have this very collective, kind of tribal society where everyone is connected and they have their needs met.
Using their understanding of reality and technology in order to achieve that end on a much bigger, grander scale than a primitive culture that doesn't have access to that technology could. So what we'd be capable of would be way beyond. And that to me is the Eden that I'm looking for. It's where we've finally put to rest the idea of externalization of harm, of that it's okay to advantage one over another, that there is such a thing as a win-lose game that leads us anywhere we want to go.
Yeah.
That I actually would ever want to be a winner of that win-lose game.
Yeah.
And if we could replace that with something else, with this systemic view, and live in a world that's integrated with our Earth, our planet, but uses technology in order to connect us and have us really create amazing things. That to me is Eden, and that's what I want to put my entire life in service to. Is I want to be in service to it in talking to influencers about it. I want to be in service to it in having the women step up and be the kinds of leaders for our world that guide us in that direction, because I think we have an inherent compass towards life and sustainability that is just natural. And I don't see, like, everything else is a waste of time. To me, anything else I could be doing, making money, being popular, getting another like on Facebook or more YouTube listeners or whatever, all of that is nice, but it's It's kind of like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Totally. I actually, that's the best metaphor. I just yesterday released my first podcast on revolution, and I used that metaphor.
We're all moving the deck chairs.
Yeah, moving the deck chairs.
So let's stop and plug the hole,
make sure the thing doesn't sink. Yeah.
Or steer the boat.
Steer it away. Let's see. We're on the Titanic, and we actually see that it's heading to the iceberg.
Right.
This is before it's hit the iceberg. We see it. And we see that the captain is drunk or in
not paying attention.
He's not paying attention.
Right.
So what do you do on the Titanic when you're heading for an iceberg and the captain is drunk and not caring? Well, you take over together, collectively, not one person. Like you all together. You're all on that fucking boat together, and you find a way to steer it away from that iceberg, and then you party on the boat together once you're not,
and you dance,
and you dance.
You have a
dance,
a boat left to dance on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So this is, let's say someone's listening to this, they're totally on board. They're like, okay, I get this vision. I finally get it. I see where we're headed. How do you suggest they plug into this? How does someone plug into this evolution that's happening now?
I think it starts locally and goes globally. So it starts with aligning your values and decision making with this ethos, with creating this Eden, with thinking in a more systemic view, like realizing the interconnectedness and realizing to how to consider and all when you're making any decision in your life. And so coming from that kind of systemic view, that is systemic decision making, I think first you have to make your individual decisions that way. So I think it starts there. It starts with like, what are you going to do with your life? Are you just moving the deck chairs around, or are you going to actually do some real good?
Yeah.
And so I think it starts there, and then I think it spirals out more locally or globally with like, how do you influence the people instead of turning them against you?
Yeah.
But how do you influence the people that have some decision making over areas of life where they're externalizing harm and creating having the ship go down?
Yeah.
How do you influence them? How do you make it your job to influence the people that you know in order to think more systemically, to think and use this kind of decision making, to bring their kind of more feminine, collaborative, life centered, regenerative values. So what if we had everybody look at every decision in their life not as a means of growing and consuming, but as how if every decision had to regenerate, where I had to be more able to play with every decision I made, where not just me, but that everybody involved. So first I'd have to be aware of everyone involved in all of the ripple effect of my life. And then I'd have to decide on what I did based on something that would actually make everybody more able to play, more regenerative. And I think just that consideration, just starting on that consideration is where to begin.
Yeah.
And it'll have you think differently. And it'll have you inspired to do things differently. And what I'm hoping is what it did for me is it had me want to devote my life to it.
Yeah.
And not just on small levels, but like, how do I get in front of the right people, around this?
Yes. I think that phrase, devote your life, is really important. Like what is actually worthy of devoting your life to? And many people, they choose family, of course, and that is worthy. But us to get out of this mess, we got to move beyond the nuclear family in terms of what we care about. Because we can't just be out to care about our spouse and our children and our brothers and sisters. Like we've got like, and this doesn't mean the family.
Love that.
Yeah,
I want to say something about that because I've said before that it's no longer sufficient to believe that if we each achieve individually, that we'll all achieve collectively, that we'll all make it collectively.
That model is proven totally
right. So that's
dead.
That's gone.
Yeah,
it's actually no longer the case that if I achieve individually, that I succeed and you succeed and someone else succeeds, that necessarily means that we do so collectively.
Yeah.
And so, given that that's the jig is up.
Yeah.
It's time, and certainly identifying as your family and wanting to do good by your family is great, but what if you could learn how to be more mobile in your consciousness? So there's a time and place for you to be focused on self, There's a time and place for you to be focused on family. What if you could then focus on identifying as your community?
Yeah.
Or your country or the planet?
Yeah.
Right? And what unlocks for you when you start to identify with a broader concern, broader than just you, is a whole new set of motivations, a whole new set of actions, a whole new set of fears, a whole new set of realities. Yeah. And so I guess I want people to step into what would it be like if you identified with a broader concern than just your own.
Yeah. I want to add to this an appeal to those who are listening. If you are struggling right now in some way, let's just say financially, economically, or it could also be with your health or emotionally, or there's emotional problems or family problems. Our past model has been very much like you've got to solve, like you're going to solve these problems on your own. It's your problem. It's an individualist model. You get the success, but you got to solve the problems. Right. And I see a lot of people struggling, including people who are relatively well off, are struggling. Like they have some difficulties, in their families or emotionally or with substances or with some money problem or something. And I've come to the belief that just like no one can succeed, everyone succeeding individually is not enough. Like any way you're struggling personally is probably connected to these whole global issues. That we have systems that make it so that things are a struggle. Like our economic system produces struggle. Our health system produces struggle. Right. Our philosophical systems and spiritual systems are producing struggle. They're all producing struggle.
It's come to the inequities of and the imbalances go in only one direction. You have fewer and fewer and fewer having more and more and more. Yeah. And then more and more people having less and less and less. Yeah. I mean, the system is designed to create that. And it eventually ends up where there's only a handful of people with all of the resources and the rest of us.
Yeah. And they're not even that happy about it because they're just like struggling to hold on and like worried that they're going to have it all taken away. And
that isn't a game that you think winning that game is a game you want to win, and it isn't.
Yeah. So I would say, that it's time to start seeing that our personal struggles are going to be solved collectively, and we're gonna start solving them just starting solving them, starting getting active, doing something. I've personally found that when I adopt this global perspective, I get really charged up and energized, and I feel idealism.
Well, then you have global conversations. Yeah, then those impact other people.
Yeah, and then I feel energized. I feel like there's something I'm living for. There's something worth devoting my life for. And then almost as if by magic, all the other problems start all of a sudden they seem really small when they seemed really big before, or I feel energized now and I can solve the problems, or I meet the person that's going to help me solve the problems. It all just lines into place when you start adopting this global consciousness.
Yeah, you some of the reasons that the problems, if you're having a lot of individual problems, have so much of your attention. If you would identify with a broader concern, it's often that your negative attention on it is what's having it grow.
Totally.
And if you would just take the biggest resource you have as a human, which is your attention. Your attention is the prime resource that you have as a human being, is where you put your attention. Yeah. And they say in the research that 80 to 95% of the thoughts that you're having in any given day are either repetitive or negative. Yeah. 80 to 95%. So if you could take some percentage of that precious resource and put it instead on something that's larger than you, then I think that just even siphoning your attention will have those problems solved themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus the endless navel-gazing and therapizing on couches, trying to find on the lounge of why, as Annie would say, why it is that you are upset about your life.
Yeah.
I'm not to... I'm so not meaning to like belittle any of that. Those can be terrible and horrible experiences that we have trouble getting over.
Yeah.
But the way to get over it is not to navel gaze.
Totally.
The way to get over it is to actually it's Man's Search for Meaning, which was a book that really impacted me. Which was you don't help people by having them go in. You help them by coming up. You give them a higher purpose in their life. And then they realize when they have a higher purpose, there's a dirty secret. There's just that when what you're identified with is just your own kind of well-being and your own family and your own sense of self, then you have to generate all the energy. The moment what you're up to is bigger than that, you don't need to develop. The energy doesn't have to come from you because it comes from everyone on the planet that cares about it.
Yeah.
So you now have an endless supply of energy coming your way towards something that you have an entire population of people saying, please, we want this. So you don't have to do it alone anymore. If you wonder where the energy comes from, it doesn't have to come from you.
Yeah, and there's so many people who want this now. There's a critical mass, I think. And what your statement there about attention is the most precious resource that just sent chills down my spine because it's so obviously true. And then if you think about how most people spend their attention,
80 to 95%.
Well, and also, they're that totally, just boring jobs that don't use their creativity.
Right.
And then when they come home, they just tune out to just kind of passively consume television. And then they get involved in drama. And our tribe in the past, I think, has gotten
it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
for me to imagine the person out there that is in their life day in and day out saying, is this all there was?
Yeah.
That's like my heart literally aches and breaks for that person.
I see you. You're like almost in tears as you say that. Yeah.
Like, and so all I want is like people to engage in creating the world that's uniquely in their vision, because we'll all be better off if that vision is the reality that they're seeing and that we're all seeing.
Jennifer, thank you so much for taking this time. You are a leader in this movement, in this evolutionary revolution, this revolutionary evolution.
Yes.
And in particular, you are a leader in the dialogue of what is women's leadership. Like you're a leader among women's leaders, and you're sparking this dialogue of how are women going to take charge in this evolution and become the leaders that this planet needs. So thank you so much for your work and your ideas and your idealism. If people want to be in touch with you or find out more about you, where do they find you?
Yeah, I mean, right now I've got several different projects, but probably the best way is jennifersrussell.com. And that's a site that
Jennifer S. Russell, and you're also on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on the net, so I can be found, YouTube and all those places. So I'd love to connect.
And the spelling is 2 S's and 2 L's, right?
2 S's, 2 L's.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
2 S's, 2 L's.
Well, everyone, just for you listening, you've already just gotten an incredible taste of Jennifer, so I really don't need to say anything more. But I'll just say that if I ever have, or in the future will have, like deep, deep questions that I can't figure out, like not just a little minor thing, although she's good on those too, but like something like really like a deep soul question about my purpose or where I'm heading or what I should do in my life or how I should resolve some problem. There are few people that I would go to ahead of Jennifer Russell on that. Her wisdom is just legendary, and I feel honored to have access to your wisdom, and I am in total support of spreading your wisdom around the world.
Thank you. This was incredibly fun and enlivening. I appreciate having this dialogue with you. It was great.
Yeah.